Hi, let's follow up the previous video with authentication. Um, it's not just authentication, of course. We'll have to do some configuration for our API, like the Swagger setup and an email service, which is a part of the account verification process. Okay, we haven't actually run our project yet, so let's try that. And let's see what our current Swagger configuration is. Yeah, okay, so we have an empty Swagger configuration. So let's start by creating our first controller. Our first endpoint will be to register a user. You could skip this and just seed the user like I showed in previous video, where we seeded user roles, not users, but you could do the same for users. But let's just start by creating an AuthController. You do this in the API project. You can actually add a controller. It's called AuthController. Okay. A couple of things we're going to do here is add some decorators for the Swagger to display for the Swagger display. Some attributes. This will help the display in Swagger. Let's change this to just book. Let's run this again. Okay, that's not good. Okay, of course we should do something like this, but actually we don't want this method. We don't want the get method here. We will need a constructor to inject our services later on, and I like to make regions, just call it post. Most of our methods will be post, so it's not entirely useful to make the region, but that's just how I like to roll. Okay, first method would be something like this. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Something like this. Let's leave this out for now and run it just to see if it works. It's giving me return statement. Let's leave it at that at the moment. So you should see something like this, our first endpoint. This auth name comes from the route controller, these decorators, and this register method comes from here, from the HTTP post. Well, this is just basic .NET web API stuff. But what we want here is first, of course, we want this working, but later on we'll want to authenticate using a JSON web token and test it through this Swagger user interface. Okay, that's just some setup. For registration, of course, we don't need it yet. Okay, let's just start by registering a user and test it out through the Swagger. I'm just gonna copy paste the code. I've done this before. It's actually pretty generic stuff, with an exception of a few extra user fields, something like that. So some extra information you'll want from the user. Okay. You see this auth service. The reason we don't just put everything in the controller is for testing purposes. To unit test better. So you could add a folder in your backend API called services and then make a auth service. I'm going to move this to my shared backend project because, like I said, it's pretty generic. With generic, I mean it's gonna differ a little bit from project to project, but it's mainly gonna contain the same methods with slight variations. So yeah. And here I'm going to make a auth service. That's going to let's see. My previous project, of course, I did it a little differently. I made an auth base service because I have multiple projects, multiple APIs, but that's not important to you. Let's see. Auth service. That would be the entire class. So we have a login method, register, and all kinds of methods to either reset passwords or confirm the user account through email, and even delete the user. My time's running out, so I'll be right back. Actually, let's just keep it simple for now and have only the register one. You see this authentication result is just a custom contract I'm returning to the front end. So let's create that. What should I call this? I'm gonna use this also in the front end, like I said, so let's just call this authentication response to be consistent and call this responses or something. Responses. This is in my shared project. Authentication response. Authentication response. Okay. Let's put a few fields in here. Those token things we'll use later. User roles we'll use later. For now, we only need a success, but okay. Let's see if I referenced this project. I guess not. Yeah, okay. My IDE is going to do that for me. This request I'm also going to use in the front end, so I'm going to add this to my shared project, and maybe let's make it a little better. Make an auth folder, move it there. Just the namespaces. Request add, add a folder, auth register user request. It's kind of contracts I'm making. I'm kind of thinking now, should I make records of this? I like the record functionality. Yeah, let's do it. Let's just make a record. Make a record of this. Okay, we have some records. Let's have this. Okay, let's implement missing members. Okay, something like that. Let's inject the auth service into the controller so we can work with it. Auth service. Service. Okay, this is accessible now. We'll have to add this to our program. To our startup, since backend is just a library, a class library. We can't do it there, so let's do it in here. Builder.services scoped. auth service. Auth service. And this should be all the setup to register a user. Of course, we didn't code it yet. We haven't actually specified what data we want to capture from the user. So imagine creating a user interface, a form where you ask to register a user. You'll want probably the name, the email, phone number, optionally, the password, of course, maybe the language. Yeah, things like that. Let's do that now. If you don't know what a record is, feel free to look it up. I'm starting to realize this it's gonna take a long time to record all of this. Yeah, to set up all of this. You'd probably want, like I said, something like email, name, phone number, username, stuff like that, password. I'm going to put those name, email, phone number into another object, user info, and I'll make it. Should I do this? Yeah. Info request. I'm actually typing out things. Okay, like this. Something like this. Email, name, phone number. Okay. You'll probably want some other fields. Let's say language. Something like that. Okay. I'm kind of used to not used to using these record types. It's all working fine. Okay. So I think we can start coding the register method, and I'll set up the email service for registration afterwards. Okay. A lot to do, little time. Let's get to our auth service. Just copy and pasting. Authentication response. Okay. This would be, I think, the minimum code to register a user. So we'll first see if the user doesn't exist yet. If it exists, we're going to throw an error. If this the unhappy path, the happy path would be to create a new user. If that fails, we'll throw an exception. If all goes well, we'll just return a success true. Of course, when everything goes well, we'll want the user to verify his email address, his or her email address. So we'll have to send them an email with, yeah, I'll explain that later. Let's comment it out for now. Let's implement some dependencies, however you call it. Have constructor. Let's start with these. This application user is actually identity user. We're going to have to add our NuGet package to this backend. It would make sense to put this auth service directly in the API project as I started with, or even in the database project, since it's specific from project to project, but all, yeah, of course, from it's kind of tied to the database. So choose wherever you want to put it. I'd recommend putting it directly in the API project, but as I have a different setup, I want to probably reuse it. I said it's pretty specific for project to project, but my projects are pretty similar. I'm gonna have the same users and the same logins, login logic throughout different projects. Okay. Okay, let's just copy over these identity packages, maybe. To our backend one. Okay. Okay, we resolved that. Application user is identity user. This validation. Just be. Validation failure is coming from the NuGet package fluent validation. Let's see. Which we'll also use later on for example, for this register user request, we'll want to validate this later on. Let's just add the package. Just copying this over, fluent validation.asp.NET Core. This is the version I'm using. Okay. And we're kind of assigning to make sure we're using the validation failure of fluent validation. Okay. This validation exception is actually coming from the Jason Taylor's clean architecture. Template. We'll just add this. Exceptions. Let's add a class validation exception. I understand we're not really keeping things simple right now, but it's something we'll just have to get over with. Disclaimer, most of these, I mean, all this authentication stuff is the least exciting stuff of this project, I find at least exciting. I noticed we didn't do this. Forgot to add the async. We're probably still using the wrong one here. See, we're running out of time. We want to make sure we're using our own validation exception here. Okay. So, okay, let's revert them back to classes. The idea of making records was to deconstruct and oops. Was to deconstruct and maybe like we can do in JavaScript. Yeah, map them more easily. Anyway, let's just stick with this. Ooh. Oh, okay. This should be all to register a user. I think we, of course, and something I would do is copy over these fields to another object because I don't want to work directly with this identity user. But we'll do that later. Let's just run it. See if everything works. Oops. So this is a nice thing with Swagger, kind of have all these contracts defined, and we should be able to register a user. However, this doesn't have any validation yet. Let's just do this. This is, of course, the reason why we want to verify a user account by email, so we don't. So users can't just use non-existing credentials. Let's see if we can just nullify this password. Yeah, we'll have to do some setup for this later. Just do this and see what happens. Ooh. See, these error messages are quite useless. I'll have to fix that. But I'm not gonna do it now for this video. I'll do this later on. So the actual error seems to be user password validation failed. Password requires non-alphanumeric. Oops. This is annoying to fill in. Let's see, just 1, 2, 3. So with the $sign 3. Cross body. Okay, seems good. Succeeded. Okay, let's check our database. Make sure your Docker is running like this. ASP.NET users, and we have the user, and the email is not yet confirmed. So it looks good. Password is encrypted, of course. That's Identity Framework doing all the work for us. To change these rules for passwords, we can do this in our where we set up the identity service, where we configure the identity service. It's over here in the database project. Let me see if I can copy paste that real quick. We'll put this over here, but maybe we'll probably want to have this in our shared project. Would look something like this. So you pass these options, and here you can define the options. Require lowercase, uppercase, require non-alphanumeric. That's what the one we just saw. And require unique email and confirmed email. Okay. So now we should be able to register a user that with the password of just test1234. Let's try it. Oops. Test1234. English. Well, we're running against our breakpoint. You see the created result is succeeded. So this means these options are taken into account. Let's check our database. We have test2 with an encrypted password. Okay. What's next? Sending the confirmation email? I guess so. I'm just trying to figure out where I should move this in my shared folder, of course, in the backend. Maybe let's just make a configuration folder. And add in there. Let's just call this identity config for now. Move this over. Entity config. Like this. Okay. This next step you can skip. As I mentioned, this is something I like to do. Is copy over the important fields. The, the fields I find important from this identity user over to its own user profile. You can skip it if, oh, I see. This is the name of the user. As we want the user to log in with his or her email address and the password, we set the username to email and not the actual name of the user because that contains spaces and it's a name that could be, that is not necessarily unique. So we're passing the actual name, create a user profile. Go to alter this one. We ran out of time. Let's make a new entity user info, inherit from auditable entity, copy over these fields. Let's make phone number like that. And let's call this user info. Okay. I see we don't have a reference to the original user, so we're gonna user ID. It's not actually a reference, but just a string. Okay. Then we'll need to save it to database. But let's first add a migration since we changed some stuff. It directly executes. Copy the. Okay, let's call this user info. This is, of course, gonna build the project, so if there's any errors, it's gonna tell me. Okay. Let's check our migration. Yeah, and you see it's trying to delete the user roles. We don't want that. I don't exactly know why this happens. I think it's because we commented out the seeding, the code to seed. That's kind of lame that that happens. Phone number should be nullable. I don't know why. Just make sure it doesn't alter the roles. Okay, let's update the database. I mean, apply the migration. Okay, let's check it out. So we've got linked user and user info ID is email confirmed as well. So now if we register, of course we have to run our project again. Oops, it's not the right one. The API project. Okay, so now if we register, it should be copied over to another user, tester3 at gmail.com. Phone number we can skip. For which, let's go with that. It should have worked. Oops. Doesn't seem like it worked. Did we miss something? We didn't get any errors either. Oh yeah, of course. We didn't actually save it to the database yet. So let's do that. I'm gonna inject. This is so now I'm in my shared project and I'm going to inject a specific database. It's kind of bad practice what I'm doing now. I'll have to unless this is but social DB context. Unless of course we use a interface that applies to both. I'll fix that later. I'm not gonna waste time in the video for this. I put social DB context. Just call it context. And label these ones. Call this context. Save changes as sync. Yeah, I haven't. This is still commented out, I'm guessing. Okay. Cancellation token. Just going to add a new one. Okay, so now we should be good to go. I see my time is running out again. Let's just quickly copy this over so we don't have to do this again. I'll call it tester4. And we've got another error. It's telling me last modified by does not allow nulls. Should be, oh, it should allow nulls because we're in the added one. We're only setting these two, not those. Let's see, did I make a mistake? Last modified by is not nullable indeed. Possibly a bug in my previous project. Let's keep it nullable for now. And we'll have to make a new migration for this and apply it. Let's stop running. Let's call it last modified at of by. Just call it that. We'll have to make sure it's not trying to delete the user roles again in our migration. Come on, if it reloads. Oops. Oh, it's not. It's weird. Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't include this role stuff. Okay, apply it. Check out the database. No, it's nullable. Rerun the project. Bum, 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 bum. And we've got another error. The error logging isn't great in here. We'll definitely have to fix that someday when I find the time. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's another thing I wanted to mention. Something not great in this project is when it's all in this try catch, and yet if this could succeed and then fail here, which results in the user being created but not the user profile. So actually we should put this in a transaction. I'm definitely going to try that. I'm not sure how it's going to work with the user manager, and then this one's using our data context. But I'll fix it. Maybe I'll update you with the solution. So all we actually have to do is just create a new user. Let's call it tester 5. Then this should work. Setting my breakpoint. Let's see. Did we hit another bug? Don't think so. Should have worked now. Okay, so we've got the user copied over. Maybe you'd want to only copy it over when the email is confirmed. The problem there is we can't access the request data. So yeah, we'll have to definitely update this as emailed confirmed when it happens. That's the downside of copying over these fields, that you have to keep the user profile in sync with the ASP.NET users. Yeah. So we've got the name, email, phone number wasn't there. Okay, looks great. So the next thing would be to send the confirmation email. I realize this is quite a boring video. So we'll have to send a confirmation email to the user. For that, we'll need to set up an email service where you configure the email address you want to send from using SMTP, and we'll have to generate a unique token so the user can click a link and end up activating his or her account. That's what this user endpoint is for. Let's do it next. I'm quickly going to change this one to something more generic. I'm going to put this here. Oh, it's already here. I hope this name doesn't conflict with something already existing. Just going to copy this over. Maybe context. Text. Oops. Yeah, I see this DB context is also here, but I'm going to reuse this auth service as much as possible for multiple databases, multiple APIs. So I'm going to try to keep this reusable as possible, make this as reusable as possible. Okay, what's next? This one, I'll probably use all the reusable code to move all the reusable code to an auth base service and inherit from that or override reusable methods. Because it's kind of generic stuff. I mean, for most backend projects, you'll have more or less the same code for authentication. So As you can see, these protected ones, because I normally put this in a base auth service. Okay, send confirm user email, user mail. So this user manager generate email confirmation token async is what generates a unique token for this user. And we'll have to set up this confirm user endpoint in our controller. The email body, this isn't my native language, but just says activate your account. Account activation. The subject body, I constructed some kind of email template, but feel free to just specify your own subject. Subject would be something like whatever, like this. And for body, you can just directly put the email body in. That would contain just this link, clickable link. Okay. I'm going to, let's leave this out for now. I'll change the subject, the contact type. Okay, and then I made another method for send mail because I'm going to reuse this send mail multiple times. In local development, we don't want to actually send the mail to that party. We just want to send it test emails to our own junk email. Okay, so next thing we'll do is create this request. So it's just, we're going to put this here. What should we call this? Mailing, maybe. Mail request. Let's just model it like this. Let's make a record. Apply to. Isn't the last one nullable? I don't know. Record. What is this? Namespace, yeah. Okay. Okay. Should be like this, I think. Reply to, we forgot. I'm going to make this nullable. It's kind of lame that we have to Let's see. Do we really have to do this? Oh, I just forgot. Okay. That's lame. Kind of. Unless you want to do this, but guess you could. It's kind of lame, but alright. Now I'm at it. I'm going to change this one to. Would be something like this, but I guess we'll have to initialize all those. It's quite lame. Let's have it like this. Oops. Oops. Okay. Let's put in this default value. Okay, seems like we don't need this one anymore. Gonna do this a little differently. Just like this. Be let's do it like that. I think. Okay, we'll need this environment variable. Let's see if we actually can have this in here. This is a dependency of ASP.NET Core, if I'm not mistaken. Something that should actually be accessible in your API project. Okay, we have that. Then I think it's time to make the email service. Or should we have the confirm user endpoint first? Let's see. Let's change this log level. Critical is kind of dramatic. Confirm user endpoint. Okay. Let's just add a this right here. Yes. The thing here is we don't want to, since we're building an API, we don't really want to redirect our user to some kind of API endpoint. We'll want to welcome them on in our application, have an informative message, and like, for example, saying we are activating your account, and we'll redirect you to the login page afterwards, something like that. Whether it's successful or not, all those things. Okay. I'm just going to add this one as well. That's going to be for later on for resetting passwords and all that stuff. It's basically the same, almost the same. Okay. Oops. We'll need to define a class and register it in our API. Let's add a class here, frontend config. Not sure if this is gonna be the final place to move it. So I'll have two properties, confirmation endpoint. Oops. Let's make it a record. What's the other one called? Set password. Okay, something like that. Let's see if it has a base URL. Okay, let's make sure we inject this one. There's something special about these things. It's an options object, so we'll have to something like this. options from the Microsoft extension options, frontend config, and then we'll have to access the value like this, and we'll have to configure services, this as a singleton in our program startup. Let's see if we can do it. Services singleton. This should be builder.configuration, I think. Yes. Get section. I don't know what this is saying. Anyway, we'll have to add these in our app settings. This will be different for our local. Let me rephrase that. I think it's going to be the same for our local as for our production one. So we'll add it just in the app settings. Like this. Okay, the base URL is different. URL. That's probably going to be different from project to project as well. So, let's copy it over and this should be the endpoint of where our Blazor frontend is going to run. The Blazor frontend we didn't make yet. So maybe we should keep it on the API for now. Is that a good idea? We're running our API on 5001 apparently. So that's correct. Let's actually change it and change it in our launch settings. Rerun it. Oh, no. Never mind. Phew, let's make an endpoint on our controller, AuthController, another post endpoint. Confirm user request. Looks very similar as the register one, just another service method it calls and another payload. So let's make this user request and this shared one requests. Yeah, I'm going to put it in the shared project because I want to reuse it in the front ends. I'm just gonna, how do you spell this? Confirm user request. Oops. It's going to have a user ID and a token. Okay, that's that. Let's make the method in our backend project. I should actually put all of this into a region and so I can collapse it. Okay. Let's just do this. Should I call it register or create? Just call it create user. And region, let's call this confirm user. Okay, authentication response, not found exception. Response true. Like that. Does not found exceptions. I'm going to make in the exceptions folder found exception. Also something I copied from the Jason Taylor one. Oops. Just inherits exception and over whatever. Okay. This one's in. So now we have we just have to add this one to our interface like that. So now we should have a good controller. I'm going to use this endpoint name temporarily for in these app settings. It's probably going to be auth confirm if I'm not mistaken. Let's maybe check it on the API first. We'll need to have a project without errors, of course. I'm not using hot reload. Okay, it looks like our project can't run because of this one. Of course, this doesn't have to be a singleton. It is have to. Okay. Configure. That should do it. Okay, let's run it. Assuming it should run now. Yes, okay, it's complaining for the pet social DB because I changed this interface, I think. And the auth service, I used I think because I used this DB context, and I'm not inheriting from it in here. Oh, yeah, but this one inherits from my DB context. Probably this one, and inherit implement the interface IDB context on the pet social DB context instead of its own one. So I'm just gonna delete it for now. Okay, I think that's good. I kind of lost track where we were. We were checking the endpoint for AuthConfirm. Okay. But we still haven't hooked up the email service yet. But let's see what it would make, what kind of email it would make. Let's just see what the email body would be. Maybe if we register a new user. I think it's tester6. .com 6. Actually, this language, I don't know if it was the right thing to add this here. Anyway, let's just roll with it right now. Phew. Cannot dynamically create instance of type backend config. No parameters defined. Okay, let's see what's happening. Cannot dynamically create an instance. Okay, because I probably made a record of it. Let's see. So let's just keep this a class. Oops. What was it again? Club string base 0. Club string confirm user endpoint. I think string reset password endpoint. I think like this. Let me check. Confirmation endpoint. Okay. Lame name. Let's call this confirm user set password. Yeah, okay, I can understand why I did that. But let's do it like that. Okay, retry. And is this going to work, or did it already create this user somehow? Okay, I was just interested in the email body, which seems to be null. How is that possible? We put the breakpoint here, yet it didn't. Okay. User ID did not seem to be passed. Where did it? Oh, yeah, it did. And it's followed by the token. But somehow I have a 1 / too many. Let's just see if it works. Okay, I think it's. Oh, yeah. Probably because I. Yeah. Just gonna do it again to see what happened. So localhost 3001. This doesn't look like the correct endpoint. It seems to be missing confirmation endpoint. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, that's my fault. Of course. It didn't map it correctly because I changed the name. Let's change it back and config. Okay, this should be better. Where was the breakpoint? Let's try it again. Okay, this should be good to go. But actually, we don't support the user token and user ID in here. So we should do it / should be think something like user ID token. Let's see how we construct it. It's a user ID and a token. Okay, like I mentioned, we actually don't really want to do this on the API, but for this example, I'm doing it anyway. Normally, it's coming from the front end, and we're posting this user ID and the token in the body. So let's quickly call this use from route because it's coming from here, and of course we. Okay, so finally we can implement the email service. And after that, we can log in using, so when the account is confirmed, we can start the login process using JSON Web Tokens. Okay, let's make a user service, an email service. I'm going to make a new library project. Am I recording? Yes, okay. Let's call it mailing class library. Okay. Let's change the name of this class to, should we put it in the services folder? Yeah, let's do it just for consistency. It's probably the only thing it's going to contain, so it's not really necessary to put it in a services folder, but I think at least, that's what I think at least. Email service. And I'm just going to copy the code. I'll probably need a construct. No, of course we'll need a configure services. Let's be consistent with the naming, and we'll probably need this public static method void add email, add mailing or something, or mailing client, or whatever you want to call it. By services collection from services and I configuration something like this. Let's see. Like this. Let me just check my static void, static class. Okay, this is coming from that. See, somehow I don't have this package. This one I just put in the wrong name. Okay, so it's reference assembly, Microsoft extensions. Okay. The I configuration. It's gonna be, okay, I just misspelled one. Probably registered this one. The email service. Let's see, we're going to have the, let's go create interfaces. It's just gonna be one interface, but whatever. Email. Do I actually need this? Not really, maybe. Maybe I could just say like email service like that, but for consistency and maybe testing purposes, let's do it like that. Okay, and in here I'm just going to paste the code. So my time's gonna run out again, but let's quickly edit some stuff. SMTP config we need to send to send emails directly. The IMAP we won't need. That's actually just like to synchronize our email server contents, like for example copying over the email to the send folder. We're not going to use this right now. Will I use it later? I don't know. Just remove it. Removing that one. I believe this is using MailKit to send emails. So we're going to add that in a bit. This is some code I added extra. I'll just leave it in, but it's not entirely necessary. Let me show you the entire code so you can copy it if you need to. Let's create this class, add a folder config, add a class to it named smtp config. Oh, I misspelled it. smtp refactor. Some and it's something like this. Actually, both SMTP and IMAP kind of have the same properties, but let's not worry about the IMAP for now. So I options. Okay, mail request. This is referencing the common project. And all of this comes from MailKit. Let's add this one. You could find it through NuGet, of course, but I'm just going to. Ooh, what's all this? I'm going to just paste in the MailKit package. Oops. Like this. What's happening here? Oh yeah, okay. Oh, it's async, send mail. Let's copy this to the interface. Okay. Am I using the right SMTP client? MimeKit, which MimeKit is okay. Yeah, okay, it's using system.net mailing. We need mailkit.net SMTP, and then this should work. I'm not really going to explain it. Most important is that we still have to configure the SMTP config, of course. And somehow we'll probably have to pass it. Let's see how we'll do that. As this is a class library, we'll have to add the SMTP config in our app settings. This is quite sensitive data, so I am going to show you the keys, but I'm not going to show you my password. I'm going to try to not show you the password. And I'm going to add this straight into the app settings.json, since this is the same for development as for production, at least for me it is. So SMTP config looks something like this: host. I'm using my own my own domain. Feel free to look up the settings of your I don't know, Gmail or own domain settings. You'll find it for sure. So yeah, okay. Left out my password, of course. Yeah. Now I need to make sure to never open that again, so you don't see my password. Okay, let's pass these options. Okay, so that should be something like this. SMTP config is coming from our mailing. Oops. And this is an I options thingy. Let's see what this means. Can we do this already? Configuration, get section. What's wrong? Get section, okay. I don't really see what's wrong here yet. Let's add this services at mailing. Probably need to add a reference to mailing. See. add mailing, builder.configuration. Okay, so after hours and hours of looking what the issue might be, I came to a solution, not the solution I wanted, but let's see. So I'm just going to show configure services, and the database project seems to work fine, just like that. If you click through on the configure service, you have this iService collection iConfiguration, which is what I need. And the static class option configuration service collection extensions. However, and in this project you have all kinds of implicitly installed packages. I think the important ones are configuration abstractions, dependency injection abstractions, and the options one. As far as I know, I have all the same ones in the project I want to use this configuration. Let me check again. This one I just added to solve the problem, but let's see which one I'm missing. So it's still very strange that I should be having all the same ones. Let me However, this is still giving me this action thing, so it's still not I'm going to rebuild it, clean it, rebuild it. Going to do the same for this one. Both configure methods should really point to the same thing, but apparently it doesn't. So it's still not right. I can't seem to figure out where this options configuration service collection extensions comes from. Seems to be a slight difference. Anyway, let's just fix it with the binder, configuration binder. It's really strange to me why this is happening. But okay, I'm going to undo this stuff here. And we're just going to use this version. It works, but not the same way as before. Just call this config. Okay. So now it should work and we should receive an email. Okay, nothing errored, so I just opened the email and then you see something with a link. This is in Dutch, but it just says activate your account. Let's click it. Okay, apparently we're getting a 405, which is method not allowed. And it's probably due to the fact that we changed, just for demonstration purposes. Normally we're coming from the front end, posting to the back end, but now we are just yeah, opening it directly on the back end on the API. So let's try that again. Failed invalid token. For some reason, this works when it's coming from the front end and posted as a in the method body. Which is quite strange that it doesn't work right now. Okay, it seems like strange that it didn't work before, but it seems like you shouldn't decode the token. I don't know why it failed before then, but okay. Okay, so normally our user should be confirmed after 26 attempts or something. We finally have one confirmed user. Tester 26. Okay, so With tester 26, we can finally log in. That would be the next step. All the rest is quite similar, like resend confirmation or reset the password. It's kind of the same. You just use the user manager and generate reset password token, stuff like that. The next thing will be to log the user in using a JSON web token. Ciao. Hey, I'm editing previous video, but now while rewatching the video, I saw a few things I want to fix, so bear with me. First thing would be in the entities. Just some good practice I forgot to do is in the user profile. We'd want to have a property a property for the foreign key. And we call this user info ID. This is useful for when you when was it again? Something with updating. I guess you don't always want to pass the whole object. Sometimes you just want to pass the ID. So yeah, it's just a good practice to always include the foreign key. Entity framework will map this, so there's no. I don't think you'll need a new migration for this to apply. This is more. This is just useful in your code. Since this table already exists, Entity Framework kind of already made it the foreign key column. So yeah, that's not a very clear explanation, but you might be on the wrong channel for that. Okay, next thing. I was struggling a bit with the records since that's pretty new to me. But I liked the feature since I've been a JavaScript developer for a long time. And where did I want to change this? In the auth service, where we're going to send the confirmation mail. Oof, this looks zoomed in for some reason. I had a little piece of genius here, if I can say so myself. Just actually for local development, I wanted to have reusable functions and mail or send email. I don't know what I called it. The mail requests. No, envelope or something. Envelope. Something like that. And it actually just had this and that in it. Await send mail. Oh yeah, okay, that's this one like that. But I encountered this problem. This was something like mail envelope .2. I wanted to overwrite, but it's not possible since it's a record. It's not possible to set it, but we can do. We could use this the width operator, but I'll have to check how to do it or something like that. Width and then say like 2. Oops. 2 equals this. I'll just have to check what the actual syntax is. Be right back. I guess it's something like this: mail envelope with 2 equals, and then we override this email address to for local testing purposes. We don't actually want to send emails to tester25@gmail.com, but because we can't access it, of course. This one, just junk mail, we can access. So that should be a good fix. And this makes all the conversion of class to records worthwhile. And I believe my JavaScript past self will be proud of me, is proud of me when I'm using something similar. And the whole point of this method was to be reusable, and I kind of undid that because I got confused with the record stuff. So that's fixed. Another thing, I just call this class AuthService. That's not too smart, especially if you have a front end and a back end project. You'll probably have an AuthService for the front end and one for the back end that's totally unrelated with each other. So I'd probably want to refactor this to Auth API service, or at least change the interface to Auth API service. Let's refactor them both. Auth API service or API auth service. Let's prefix. It's smart to prefix it. Auth API service, API auth service, whatever. This refactor didn't really work too well. Let's see if we can do this. API auth service. Okay, that's better. We'll probably put most of the reusable code in the auth base service, but it's gonna be for later. Let's refactor this one. API auth service and packager. Hope everything's right. Let me see. Okay. And then the next thing, I'll probably get in trouble using this IDP context. Let me think about it. Maybe not in here, because what I actually wanted to do is have IDB context here, but then in the database configure services, I actually wanted to have the interface, the real interface, like the iPad social DB or something like that. The reason why I think this is okay, because most databases will, at least for my backend projects, will have the same entities, more normally. Um, so this would not get much larger, I think, for authentication. Maybe a little bit, but then I would want to make a new interface iPad SocialDB and inherit from IDB context and somehow make it work. So the Pet SocialDB has all of this and the specific ones for Pet SocialDB. My time ran out. And then my next database would be would then have its own interface also with these shared properties. Yeah, whatever. Maybe I'll come back to that later on. Another thing I noticed in this project is I'm kind of I have a unusual setup. I explained it multiple times because I'll have multiple similar projects sharing front-end and back-end code. Unfortunately, it's not possible for me to version control it per project, so I actually wanted to have a Git init, so push this to GitHub, this Pet Social project, but also take the shared code with it, but that's not possible apparently. So maybe I'll have to find a solution to that. Possible solution would be it's not really a solution, but version control each project separately and then have another version control for the shared code, maybe. Or in the solution project. Or maybe if I ever get that far, shared code can go to a custom NuGet package or something and implement it in each project, something like that. Might be feasible. Okay. But don't worry too much about it. I'd recommend you put controllers and services just in your backend project, everything backend related just in the backend project, and keep your database just in a separate project, but it could be in the same folder. So you can have it in the same version control. Even your front end can be a separate project in the same folder. So you can all push it together to GitHub and deploy it together if you want. We'll see more about that in the future. I'll make some videos about it. I mean, to deploy them through GitHub workflows to Azure. Anyway, what I realized is since this backend project is so heavily reliant on entity framework and identity framework, yeah, it's kind of a project that I might move out of the shared folder since this has dependencies on mailing and that social API has dependencies on backend. We'll see how I'll fix that. Maybe in the future, it might be cleaner to just have the API to depend on the backend and the API to depend on the mailing, but have nothing in between. Anyway, we'll fix that maybe in the future. But what I didn't like is I put this service registration in the API project while it's actually a part of the backend project. So let's make a configure services. to kind of keep it modular or something. Is it static? Yeah, private, no, public. Static void add shared backend, I'm gonna call it. It's gonna have this iService collection services and iConfiguration configuration, and then have this. Let's see if we can do it. Yep, that seems cleaner to me. Just because I moved that code to the backend project. If you only work with your API project, just keep it as it was. Just keep it in here, register it in here. Anyway, so what I have to do then is add shared backend builder.configuration. That's a little bit cleaner for me. This front-end config. Where is this used? Seems like the front-end config is used, on the backend project. So let's try to move that over to here. And we might have similar issues as in last project. Let's see, where does this reside? Yeah, that's good. Okay. Oh, it's just working. This is a really weird. Oh yeah, okay, because this backend implicitly uses all the packages it needs. I'm guessing implicitly installed. So like these dependency injection abstractions, all those packages, options, which makes this work, also makes that we can just call services.configure. So we don't have to bind anything or something. We don't have to include extra packages to configure this like we had to do in the mailing. It was quite a misery. But okay, I still don't really know what happened there. Probably just a mismatch in package versions or something. Anyway, I think that's it for now. I might have. There's definitely stuff I could do better. Let me know if you see something. Ciao. One last thing I realized that wasn't really smart of me is I put requests and responses in here, which is, I might come back to it later, but for now it's okay. But instead of making feature folders and have it contain request responses, I somehow split it differently. I was too focused on making the video, I guess. But I'd rather just have it like that. Move these out. Refactor, adjust namespaces. And then this response. Maybe I should call it features or something. Like a folder with features and then add them in there. Maybe that's a good idea. Features. Add this one in here. Mailing in there. And did I lose something? This request folder can go. Actually, I just want to make the requests and responses in each feature instead of the user info can go into features. It's not actually a feature, just like whatever entity kind of thing. Oops, there's responses. I'm going to put it there. I'm just going to add it directly. Response, there's the request, should go in there. Let's see, can we just adjust refactor? Let's see. Okay, and then mailing should have the same, just requests for now. Mail requests. Okay, adjusts namespaces. Okay, then user info also needs a requests folder. Move it in here and adjust the namespaces. This makes a little more sense. And let's see. Okay. Let's rerun this. Seems to be working. What I found out was that it says nullable true everywhere. Don't think that's the case. Let me check it. Hey, it shouldn't be the case at least, so that's kind of misleading for possible front-end developers. Nullable email string. Maybe this has something to do with the records. I don't know, or just rebuild the project. Is also a possibility. But yeah, I don't think so. It's not the end of the world. Ciao.